Hey guys, my name is Moon and welcome back for more Witch on the Holy Night. So last episode it was Toko versus Alice and Alice lost, like really lost. It was quite sad because she nearly died technically, right? So I think this episode it's gonna be Aoko maybe versus Toko, but we'll find out because Aoko said yeah she got her, right? But let's see what Sojiro is gonna do. He's probably gonna go there. Most likely. Witch on the Holy Night, Chapter 11. Aoko had not hung up, but the line remained silent. Alice set down the receiver, quickly put on her mantle, and made for the entrance, moving her injured body by sheer will power alone. I mean, she cannot even do anything here, though. Yeah, what is she gonna do? Along the way, she paused, then turned to Sojiro and looked directly at him.
青子に何かあったんだな。
Alice hesitated for a moment before pushing aside her anxiety and grabbing his hand.
しずきくん、一緒に来て。
Now she's actually letting him come.
待ってくれ。一緒にってどこに？
相田教会まで。青子の方は営利神父にお願いするしかないから。
Father Avery?
相田教会って病院の横にある？
そう。知っているのなら問題ないわね。説明する手間も省けたわ。
Alice left the mansion and made her way down the tree-lined path. She was clearly determined, but the look in her eyes betrayed her pain.
アリス、連絡をするなら電話は？
Sojiro asked Alice, whose grip on his hand was light but unyielding.
教会の人にならもう知らせた。もしかして病院のことを言っているなら、それこそ無駄よ。ハイヤーなんて言うけど、空を飛ぶわけでもないし、今は助けを呼ぶより、助けに行かないと間に合わない。
Alice had thought of everything. She turned to the mansion and lightly snapped her fingers. There was a lot of birds. In response, a window opened and countless starlings took flight.
1番隊は索敵。2番隊と3番隊は現場に向かって応急処置を。在庫切れになってもいいわ。
First aid?
まだ生きているなら、青子の心臓を止めないで。
Alice commanded the birds firmly.
しずきくんは裏庭から青子の自転車を持ってきて。
Sojiro let slip his discomfort at the thought of that thing. The custom-made red bicycle. When he was cleaning the incinerator, Aoko had verbally assaulted him for nearly scratching it.
いいけど、どうするつもりなんだ、アリスは。
ここにいるより、教会にいた方がしずきくんは安全よ。しずきくん、二人乗りできる？
I mean, it probably can, right? He had seen others ride tandem and was confident he could do it. Only, it was the bicycle that concerned him. Its frame was so light, Sojiro wasn't sure it could support both of their weights. So let me...
ってことは、アリスが後ろに乗るのか？
できないなら、いいわ。
Look at that face. Alice turned away as if to snub him, then began walking. Unfortunately for Sojiro, he was on her bad side.
いや、そういう意味じゃないんだ。アリスとはイメージが合わなかったから。
Ignoring his pleas, she continued briskly towards the woods. There was no way she was going to ride the bike now. Sensing her stubborn streak, she desperately called out to her.
待った。今のはこっちが悪かった。すぐに持ってくるから、怒るのはつけにしておいてくれ。
Alice stopped. As soon as he saw her stop, he hurried to the rear courtyard, grabbed the key from where it was hanging, and then used it to unlock Aoko's bicycle. By the time Soldier brought it back to the front of the mansion, Alice was continuing toward the forest.
アリスの性格、なんとなくつかめてきたな。
Muttering to himself, he straddled the bike. He rested his foot on a pedal. It felt light but sturdy. Confident the bike could support his weight and Alice's, he began pedaling.
アリス
She turned as he called out to her, before shooting him a piercing glare.
行こう。後ろの荷台に乗ってくれ。でもクッションがないから痛いと思う。辛かったら言ってくれ。止めるから。
私は大丈夫よ。しずきくんが嫌じゃなければの話だけど。
He had hit the nail on the head. Alice definitely held a grudge over the smallest things.
そういうことなら問題ないよ。アリスが後ろにいてくれるのは嬉しい。それで、行き先は間境界でいいんだな。
Unabashed and undaunted, he plowed on. His tone seemed to ease Alice's mood. She nodded calmly and took a seat on the luggage rack above the rear tire.
手を回すけど、私が触れても平気。
ん？大丈夫だよ。体力があるのはさっき証明しただろ。
Alice silently wrapped her arms around Soldier. I mean, you need to do that or else you're gonna fall off the bike. Once she had held on tightly enough, he gripped the handlebars.
よかった。
He said quietly.
何が良かったの？
Soldier turned to her, an ambiguous expression on his face, and then began pedaling vigorously. He let go of the brakes and the bicycle hurled down Shiroi Nozuka's steep incline. Surprised by the sudden speed, Alice gasped, and they clutched Sojiro tighter. She went to protest but stopped when she saw the serious expression on Sojiro's face. Instead, she decided to tighten her grip. Under the night sky, a young girl had put her fate in a young boy. What is that? Faster than a roller coaster, the bicycle hurled toward Misaki Town Station. Around the station, there was no sight of cars or people. While the town slept under its snowy blanket, two people were racing like the wind. The boy spoke.
本当によかった。二人乗りが思ったより簡単で。
But he was alone in his relief. It was their first bicycle ride together and they spent it speeding down an empty highway. The boy's words were lost to the howling wind, fortunately. In spite of the late hour, there were still lights on in the church. Originally, the only light at this time of night came from the entrance to the Sleepless Host Hospital, ever vigilant and ready to receive patients. However, this was a quiet town with a little nightlife. The hospital saw perhaps one emergency patient per night, however, and it was not equipped to handle tonight's sole patient. It was a little before 1 o'clock in the morning. Leaving the bicycle outside, the two headed into the church. With its snow-covered roof, the church looked like it was wearing a white hat that lit up the darkness. In the entrance stood a tall shadow.
クオンジさん。
The man's voice was placid. Dressed in a long coat, he had been waiting for Alice.
エイリ神父、青子は？
ユイカが見ています。私が駆けつけた時には手遅れでした。
Okay, so she's here now.
青崎の家に伝令を願いたいのですが。
青子はそれを望まないわ。それに、あちらも今は城に囚われているそうです。今夜の相手は、真っ先に青子の祖父の動きを封じたようですから。
What? The two exchanged pleasantries. Sojiro did not move from the foot of the stairs.
おや、そちらは。
Though the father seemed calm, his words had an edge on them. As if to protest Sojiro from his gaze, Alice stepped between them.
彼は青子の使い魔。契約はまだなされていないけれど。
Oh, because Sojiro is a normal person, right? And yeah. Okay.
使い魔ってアリス。
Sojiro was about to complain, but Alice shot him a fiery glare. Yeah, you just better shut up, Sojiro. And that all but said, just shut up and play along. Yes.
そうですか。そのような申告はありませんでしたが、届けが遅れたのは不問としましょう。外部の魔術師と交戦中でしたからね。あなたたちはその撃退を最優先にした。ということで。
Alice nodded in thanks.
では通ります。彼の同行を許可しなさい。
ご自由に。私はこれより朝廷に向かいます。管理者が変わるのなら、両教会への資料を用意しなければいけませんので。ああ、留守中は律香に任せてありますから、必要なものがあれば彼女に。
As if passing the baton, Father Erie exited the church. Sojiro took 2 full steps back to give him a wide berth. The priest had a dignified air about him. To put it bluntly, he was strikingly beautiful. Straight nose, glistening lips. Not a single imperfection on his mildly effeminate face. But that only went as far as his appearance. His manner lacked any hint or softness or grace. Just by looking at him, you could tell he was dependable like tempered steel despite being somewhat unapproachable. The priest disappeared silently into the night, the darkness of his coat overpowering the moonlight. In awe, Sojiro watched him leave.
なんか仙人みたいな人だな。
In his own way, Sojiro was expressing affection. For some reason, Father Erie's distant tone made him feel nostalgic. Alice gave Sojiro a deadly stare.
気を許さないで。彼は教会の人間よ。
Yes, those people in the church, they're dangerous.
私たちを監視する側だけど、今回は彼の手を借りるしかなかっただけ。許されるなら、真っ先に消えてほしい人間だから。
His curse ringing in the air, Alice placed her hand on the doors to the chapel. They were twice her height and who knows how heavy. It did not look like she could open them anytime soon. Sojiro climbed the stairs, 3 at a time, and then helped Alice push the towering doors inwards. The dim light of the chapel brought with it the familiar scent of burning oil. The ecclesiastical interior was breathtaking. The tall ceiling, the stained glass windows in every wall, it all felt intended to illustrate the presence of the Holy Spirit within those chambers. Like the foyer in the Koonji estate, there was not a single heater. The bitter cold made the chapel feel more severe.
あっちゃん、こっちよ。
Ali? What is that name of the girl again? Yeah, we met her back then with Sojiro. The gentle voice echoed through the chapel, incongruous to its surroundings. It was the voice of a woman.
リツカさん、お 奥。
Ritsuka. Okay, Ritsuka. Alice made her way past the rows of pews towards the front altar. Sojiro closed the large doors and hurried after her.
早かったわね。これから迎えに行こうと思ったのに。使える足があったから。後ろの彼。足って、あれ？あなた。
お、
Sojiro showed himself, surprising the woman. They stared intently at each other, wondering what the other was doing here.
知り合い？
I like how Alice changed her face instantly.
ああ、うん。まずいことに知り合い。宗十郎さん、引っ越したって話だけど、もしかしてあっちゃんのところに下宿してるの？
Sojiro nodded. Alice turned visibly sour at this unexpected development.
どういうこと？しずきくん、律香さんとはどういう関係？関係って、そうね。お魚屋さんでしょっちゅう割引してもらったり、荷物持ちを頼んでみたり、たまにお茶飲んだりする主婦の友みたいな。意味がわかりません。律香さん結婚していないでしょ。
Needless to say, Sojiro was also not a housewife's best friend and all that suggested, but there were more urgent matters at hand.
うわ、そこを突っ込むのか。あっちゃん、私にだけは一切妥協がないのはどうかと思うの。律香さんの場合、どこまで本気かわからないから。おかしなところは全部追求しておかないといけないだけよ。あら素敵。仲のいい姉妹みたいね、私たち。じゃあ、その信頼に応えて本当のこと言うと、彼とは町内会の顔見知りよ。スパイ行為とかそういうんじゃないし、そもそもそんな器用な人じゃないでしょ、宗十郎さんは。本当？
Alice stared straight at Sojiro to let him know she was mad at him for hiding this from her.
本当だ。魚屋でバイトしてる時に知り合った人だ。前に親切にしてもらったんで、お礼にイワシを1匹サービスしたら、それ以来ごひいきに。
そうそう。商店街で買い物してれば、嫌でも宗十郎さんとは顔見知りになるわ。あっちゃんも怒るぐらいなら買い物に来ればいいのに。密かな商店街のアイドルです、彼。
アイドルとは人気者という意味で、値切りやすいかもって意味じゃないような。
His apparent popularity would have to be questioned another time. Collecting herself, Alice focused on the door in the recesses of the church.
律香さんの事情は知りませんが、彼は青子の連れです。その他に説明はいりますか？ああ、やっぱりそういうことなのね。ま、言いたいことはいろいろあるけど、今はそれどころじゃないし。了解したわ。他ならぬあっちゃんの頼みだし、特殊な例だけど、彼はこちらで保護しましょう。
Alice nodded and began walking to the door.
アリス。
ダメよ、宗十郎さん。
As Sojiro was about to follow Alice, Ritsuka stepped in his way.
あなたは行ってはいけません。彼女たちに任せなさい。
Leave this to the girls, she asserted bluntly. Meanwhile, Alice had reached the door and entered further into the chapel.
行ってはいけないって、どうして？
あなたのためよ。青子の容体は普通の人が見ていいものじゃない。気分を悪くするだけ。それとも
嫌な思いをしてもいいくらい青子が心配なのかしら。
Sojiro was not able to give an immediate answer. It had finally hit him with just how bad a state Aoko must be in. Based on Alice's condition when he found her, he intuited that Aoko's injuries might be even worse. He tried to imagine her expression in that state but could not.
青崎相手に心配なんかしません。
Literally, he had never been worried about her before, not truly.
でも会いに行くのね。
はい。
He answered her reflexively. Ritsuka sighed at the boy's naivety, but nonetheless stepped outside.
どうぞ行ってらっしゃい。アリスさんが使ったドアから入って4番目の部屋よ。今一番取り込んでる頃だから、ゆいちゃんの邪魔だけはしないように。
Sojiro thanked her and went after Alice, leaving Ritsuka Suse, the self-proclaimed everybody's friendly neighbor, alone, okay?
さて、ゆいかあたりなら止めるんでしょうけど、ま、私は宗十郎さんの味方だし、傷つく男の子とか大好物だし。少々スパルタと自覚しておりますが、これも親切な姉心と思って、宗十郎さんには後悔していただきましょう。
She spoke with force, but her words echoed aimlessly around the chapel. With a sigh, she shrugged her shoulders and made a sign of the cross in a rather unpious manner. The sound of Sojiro's footsteps grew fainter. His lack of hesitation had left a pain in her heart, and not because he did not look back at her, but because he was choosing to ignore the primal fear inside of him. An elderly man once said, "An animal's death and a human's are two different things." You may think that they're the same, but they differ to their core. Our heads have known the difference since the dawn of man. An animal's corpse, be it a pig's or a deer's, is different. If the swing of an axe or a machete is violent, then so must be, or so must a human corpse be. Therefore, before you see one with your own eyes, you should at least understand it with your ears. Listen closely, Sojiro. When a person dies, blood flows like a crimson river. It's too much to bear. Perhaps because he was not used to the stone path beneath his feet, Sojiro's mind wandered back to the words he'd heard as a child. What is that? The instant he opened the door, there was a palpable change in the air. The room was small, with only a simple bed and small wooden dresser. And there on the bed, Blank was lying on her side. Aoko? Tending to her was the woman he'd just seen in the chapel, Ritsuka. No, she only looked a lot like her. Yeah, this is the sister, Yuika, right? Her eyes were closed and her garments covered in blood. He had met her maybe once before. Yuika Suse, a nun at the church. Oh, I guess they're sisters, right? She was doing something to... Like, did they mention that there were sisters back then? I don't remember. Sorry. Yuika held a pair of scissors and some thread. Her hands moved delicately yet quickly as though playing an organ. So Aoko is really messed up right now. Her movements were precise, as if flawlessly reading sheet music. One by one, the supply of bandages diminished. Bandages recently applied to the wounds were quickly replaced with fresh ones. Gauze was placed everywhere to try and cope with the amount of blood. Once white cloth was now dyed red and discarded. The dressings scattered around the floor resembled roses. In a wilted rose garden, the nun played her organ. The scene looked unlike any reality Sojiro knew. It was clear why the air had changed. There was a savage odor in the room. Even though he was experiencing it for the first time, He knew what it was. The smell burned his lungs. He could not bring himself to look at the bed. Fighting his feelings, his eyes refused to move there. He noticed Alice next to the bed. Her ever expressionless, she looked like a statue next to the grave, except she was trembling ever so slightly. It could have been from fear, anxiety, or a combination of the three. Before her lay a life on the verge of death. But whose life? It was difficult to tell with only a glance. Some sort of puppet covered in bandages, and perhaps her hair should be beautiful, but it fell flat, disheveled. Despite her short breaths, her chest convulsed up and down. Spacious though the thought was, Sojiro recalled the rodeo machine on the roof of the department store. The painkillers and anesthesia could not have been working. New bandages were soaked crimson in second. Her fingernails bit into the sheets. Her face twisted in agony. Anesthesia would not be enough, so if she was still alive, she must be conscious too. It worried him that no one seemed concerned about this. In this state, she would surely lose her mind before her life. In short, the boy never wanted to see anything like this again. Bed sheets should be white, not red. With every blink, the color deepened. Sojiro was finally forced to accept that the bleeding mess in the center of it was her. He felt the blood surge in his veins. The squeaking of the bed, the snip of the scissors, the gasp of agony, it all faded. All he could hear was his own pounding heart. The smell of blood she choked up sent a wave of nausea through him. His knees abandoned him. And it was perfectly understandable. His brain had to shut his consciousness off to protect her itself. Dude, how does Aoko look now? The mind could only take so much reality. He would give anything to never see something like that ever again. I mean, of course, that's traumatizing. You see someone normally, right? And then now, so messed up like this. Say that is really hard to see.
青子ちゃんは全部わかっているんだね。自分だけのことじゃなくて、この後に起きることも、何が残って何が残らないのかも、全部まっすぐに受け止めている。それでも自分であり続けられるということは、とても強いことなんだよ。
And on she went. I kinda liked her smile, but she just had to go and say the one thing I wish she didn't. The last day of the middle school seemed so long ago. As the ephemeral cherry blossom petals danced around, my little dream was crushed. I'd never really considered myself strong, at least until I began remembering those words from time to time.
青崎は分かってると思ってた。いや、きっと分かってるんだな。だから、そこが強いんだろうね。
And lately, an idiot who said things like that had appeared in my life. I knew I always judged people more harshly than those around me, but to have someone I'd only known for a few days point that out was like a stab in the chest. Not only that, the words sounded so similar, they made me so angry I couldn't see straight. Only him and one other person never said anything like that to me. Then again, I suppose my sister said the same without actually saying it. You're different from us. But me being me, I took it as a curse rather than a compliment. My actions, my choices, my morals, and all the goods and the bads I've done. When all said and done, I'm really any better, or am I really better than everyone else? Of course I am. I'll never sacrifice myself for those around me. They just had to call me strong, true to myself, in spite of how alone and stubborn and ridiculous I know I can be. When I was younger, it only confused me. I mean, I don't know any other way. I am who I am. The frustrating fact is, I simply don't have the courage to give up. So why? Why do I get treated special for doing what comes naturally? The sunlight steered her. Maybe it was the pain from having her whole body held together by arcane threads. But Aoko felt like she'd had a silly dream. She gulped air through her painful parched throat. Gray rays of light shone through a small window, bringing her back to reality. Unable to bear it, Aoko attempted to roll over. Except she could only move her right arm. She tried lifting her arm, but couldn't feel anything past her elbow. Once she stopped concentrating on her bandaged arm, it fell to the bed like a stone. Aoko took in her surroundings, moving only her eyes. Evidently, she had been asleep in this bed. Unable to feel certain parts of her body, she felt like a robot. The room was tiny and undecorated. It was like an apartment without a tenant, and judging by the good repair, she guessed that she was in Ida Church. Outside, it seemed closer to noon than morning. Clouds filled the sky as usual, dulling the sun's rays. Idly, she thought that it could be enough to melt the snow outside. And then finally noticed the figure of the girl. Next to her bed, Alice Koonji was sitting in a chair unmoving.
Ohayo, Alice.
She called out to her all too casually. It was more difficult to talk than she thought. Alice was her typical stoic self, although Aoko did not notice a glimpse of concern in her eyes.
寝てないんでしょ。肌が荒れてる。
Yeah, look at Aoko's eyes. You know that she suffered. Like, yeah, her eyes are so tired.
努力はしたわ。けど、瞳子さんに飲まされたものが解毒されるまで眠れそうにないの。半端な痛みは、こういう時に生ぬるいわね。
I mean, at least for Alice. I mean, at least for her, yeah. She was healing herself, right? But for Aoko, yeah, I guess she doesn't have that. Because, yeah, Alice is different, though. She has a lot of, what do you call it again? Magic. How's it, runes? Or, yeah, pretty much in her whole body. That's why she could heal faster. Alice's uncharacteristically vulgar comment helped Aoko feel a little more like her usual self. She felt reassured having a comrade in arms by her side instead of a concerned neighbor.
そう。アリスもやられたの。状況は大体予想してるけど、一応細部を聞かせてくれない？
Aoko remained horizontal as she spoke with a cool tone. Despite Aoko's condition, Alice granted her request. After all, they had known each other for 2 years. Alice knew exactly the kind of anesthesia Aoko needed right now. Alice Koonji's battle with Toko Aozaki ended in the former's victory. The tame stroll was a special familiar even among fairy tale monsters. While lacking the incredible reality warping abilities of Flat Snark, its sheer mass and durability and strength were second to none. But the problem is, the Beowulf or Beowulf is much more faster though, right? So it can get close to Alice much more easier. Toko's rune magecraft was rendered completely ineffective by its stone armor. In all fairness to Toko, most mages would not stand a chance against a bridge giant. The reason lay in the mystic's body. As a general law of magecraft, a mystic will lose to a stronger, older mystic. The history of the bridge giant dated back well over 1,000 years. Its origins could be traced to the 1st century when Britannia was conquered by the Romans. Conversely, despite having roots dating back to the Age of the Gods, runes had unfortunately been lost to the time. Rune magecraft was a little more than an attempt to revive and use dead art. However, monsters from fairy tales like the troll were different. They lived on in the hands of Alice Kuonji. The magical world was vast, but one could probably count on one hand the number of magecraft that still functioned after being chanted into existence a millennia ago, as Alice's ploys did. In contrast, Toko, the rune user, was only about 2 decades old. Carving a rune took only a moment. There was no way a quick spell could defeat the personification of London Bridge in Alice's homeland. That being said, the beast or a beast had appeared that surpassed even those from fairy tales. Beowulf, the Golden Beast. It seemed absurd to compare a small and relatively powerless wolf to a towering stone giant. The tame troll's attacks were earthquaking. A direct hit from its 50-ton strikes would smash anything to paste, while a glancing blow would still create mincemeat. And yet the beast had attacked head-on and torn right through it. The wolf's fur bristled, and the creature metamorphosed like liquid. It was a breathtaking display. The wolf howled at the moon as if in joy and streaked forth like a bolt of golden light. In an instant, the duel was decided. The radiant spear of a wolf flew straight through the giant's chest and sank its teeth into its heart. Then the troll exploded. Chunks of stony muscle rained down. Luminous fur scattered in the wind. Two mystics dispersed without a trace in return from whence they came. The curtain fell on a battle straight out of mythology. There among the rubble of the fairy tale monsters was a golden wolf standing like a flame. What came after could barely be described as a battle. It was more like the slaughter of defeated pawns. The wolf leapt on Alice, disemboweling her with ease. Its claws cut through the protective wards on Alice's coat like a hot knife through butter. The golden wolf, this wolf which understood human speech, could only be the magical creature known as a werewolf. Werewolves were the forest people of Western Europe, with origins far more ancient than the fabricated vampire legends of the continent. However, none were known to have golden coats. It was said that the most elite werewolf bloodlines boasted silver fur. Silver werewolves were pack leaders, and werewolves of that caliber were considered phantasmal rather than merely magical creatures. But a golden werewolf was superior even to that, and so transcended human knowledge. Alice Kuonji's ploys were among the ultimate mystics to have been created by humankind. Therefore, the golden wolf could only have been a mystic born of the planet. When a celestial body has been active for millions or even billions of years, occasionally a miraculous droplet of creation spills over into our current world. This mystic had to be over 3,000 years old. A human mage, no, any mage living in the current magical paradigm would be helpless against a golden wolf. Not even in theory would they stand a chance of defeating it. Which meant that this werewolf was Aoko and Alice's worst nightmare. So how do we defeat this then?
そう。アリスがお手上げの相手だものね。私がどうにかできるはずもなかったわけだ。でも、要は魔術でなければいいのよね。テムズの動力は魔力だけど、テムズのパンチは純粋な衝撃でしょ。当たりさえすればぺしゃんこじゃないの。
残念だけど、あれ基本は狼の姿なだけで状況によって形を変えるわ。テムズの腕を受け止めた時は大猿みたいになっていたし、機関銃やロケットで狙ってもかわされるか体の硬い生き物に変化して防ぐんじゃないかしら。
So he can transform like that. Dude, that thing is so OP.
地球上の生き物なら何にでも変われるってことか。でもまあ質量までは無理かな。基本は2メートル台の生物のいいとこ取りってあたりで勘弁してほしいわね。ねえ、すごく関係ないけど深海の生き物に変わられたらちょっと怖いと思わない？
Aoko narrowed her eyes as she bemoaned this creature's existence. The conversation appeared to have revived her fighting spirit. Once again, her eyes focused and her thoughts clear, Aoko was back to her usual self.
で、その後はアリスうまく逃げられたの？
いいえ、私もあの狼にやられたわ。
Alice explained how the wolf had pinned her to the ground. Incidentally, she kept the part about Sojiro rather short. Alice herself was not entirely sure why she felt it necessary to leave most of that information out.
アリスが相手をした後、休む間もなく私のところに来たわけか。初めから昨日で決着をつけるつもりだったんだ、兄貴。姉妹かな。ここぞって時のタイミングは一緒だったの忘れてた。切り札は見せたからには敵を殲滅しなくちゃいけない。姉貴は視点を残り2つにしておいて自分の正体を告げてこっちの戦力を分けさせた。その時点で奥の手を投入してくることは覚悟してたけど、まさか人狼なんて極物とはね。
Aoko let out a heavy sigh. Alice nodded slightly in agreement.
それはそれとして宗十郎がアリスを助けに行くなんてね。感謝しなくちゃいけないんだろうけどバカな真似してくれたわ。私が瞳子の立場なら報復の可能性は一つ残らず排除する。私たちがどうにかなった後、猫の手首ひねるみたいに片付けられるわよ、あいつ。
しずきくんならこちらで保護してもらってるけど。
Aoko's eyes widened.
うわ、どういう風の吹き回し？アリスがあいつの世話を焼くなんて。
だって放っておいたら青子が怒ると思って。
Alice responded with her eyes closed. Aoko frowned in silent indignations, as if she wanted to protest where Alice got that idea from.
まあいいけど、それじゃあ今ここにいるんだ、宗十郎。姿が見えないけどどうしたの？
Still unable to move her neck, she looked around as best as she could.
彼なら気分を悪くして倒れたわ。今はエイリ神父の寝室を借りているけど。
Aoko furrowed her brow at collapsed. Sure, he was under the church's protection, but had Toko set the wheels in motion for his death?
何があったの？一体。
Alice paused for a moment before carefully answering the question.
それが あなたを見て嘔吐したの。
I mean, he saw Aoko bloodied up. Of course, he's gonna vomit. Imagine seeing the person you see every day, right? Like normally, and then now you see her so bloody and messed up like that. I mean, I would even vomit, yeah. She had decided to be blunt. Aoko was taken aback. For several seconds, dim sunlight leaked through the window. Once she had found her voice again, she muttered.
いいけど、ひどい侮辱よね、それって。
Perhaps amused or perhaps exhausted from staying up all night, Alice cracked a tiny giggle.
何よ、そんなにおかしい、アリス。
さあ、どうかしらね。けど、しずきくんにも言い分はあるでしょう。今のあなた、とても見られたものじゃないわ。
Aoko appraised her physical state. She was dressed in a hospital gown. Bandages covered the majority of her body. Her right leg was in a plaster cast. Since she could move her right arm, she brought her bandaged fingers up to her throat.
そっか、思い出した。あのガキ、まず私の首元に噛みついたんだっけ。
So she actually got bit in the neck? Okay. I mean, Alice nearly got bit in the neck, right? But yeah, Toko stopped it.
すごかったわよ、首が噛み砕かれるのって。ゴキンって音が頭の中に響いて、気持ち悪いったらなかったわ。
Yeah, how are you even alive then? Oh my god.
ち、あそこから好き勝手やられたもんだから、つい忘れてた。
Aoko sounded upbeat, but the look in her eyes was anything but. She had been torn to pieces, but her life had been mercifully spared. At least she hadn't been dismembered. She had been beaten, and her bones broken. Magic crest containing the Ozaki secret arts decorated her body. Even if her spine was broken, as long as her body was alive, the crest would piece it back together. Despite the crest easing the pain a little, she still hurt enough to want to kill that wolf 100 times over.
視点は全部壊された。これで三崎市の霊脈はフリーってわけね。全容を把握してるのはうちらだけの特権だったけど、東子は昔から知ってる以上、解析の手間もいらないと。真剣な話、所有権の書き換えまで何時間かかると思う？
東子さんなら2日かからないでしょうね。支店の修復は土地そのものに任せるしかない。支店のプロテクトが治る頃にはこの町はもう彼女のものよ。
明日の夜明けとともに破産する我が身とはね。それでアリスの方はどうなの？まだ
思考魔術だけなら少しは。
I mean, she cannot do anything right now until that Rowan disappears from her body.
あとは小道具に頼ることになるでしょうね。
ああ、お話にならないか。
Aoko went silent again, staring straight at the ceiling. Alice knew all too well what the look meant.
それでもやるんでしょ、青子は。
まあね、私諦めるのってできないから。で、そういうアリスはどうなのよ。
私は一度自分のものになったものは決して人には渡さない。
Aoko muttered in agreement to Alice's terse response. Alice's intense attachment to her possessions was enough to make even Aoko shiver. Once something is mine, it is mine. To take it a step further, betrayal was an unforgivable sin. This personal motto was further proof of her uncompromising nature.
オッケー、決まりね。じゃあ、悪いけどもう少し休ませて。今晩までには何とか動けるようにするから。
If the nun who stitched her back together had heard that, she would have fainted. Aoko could barely even eat in her current condition. Even so, Alice nodded and stood up. As Aoko's partner, she knew that once her mind was made up, she had to trust her. Silently, the girl in black began to take her leave. She stopped in front of the door, her hand to her mouth.
アリス
Aoko was curious, suspecting that Alice had something silly to say again. Quite the contrary. Instead of blushing, Alice furrowed her brow like she was thinking over a difficult riddle.
アリス
Aoko called out, but Alice remained with her back to her roommate.
なんで間に合ったのかしら。
Oh, she's thinking about Sojiro, right? Because he was way too fast. She spoke as if the words had accidentally burst out from her thoughts. Alice's question was about something Aoko could not possibly have guessed.
あの時もそう。私たち始発で帰ってきたのに。
She carried on mumbling at the door. Unable to find an answer, Alice gloomingly put her hand on the doorknob.
言いたくないなら別にいいけど。何がどうしたっていうのよ、アリス。
So the soldier maybe have something hidden within him. He can actually do something. But yeah, he was very fast. We'll see. Alice did not respond. She opened the door to leave the room and left a few words hanging in the air.
どうでもいいことだけど、ゆいかさんにはしずきくんは見えなかったそうよ、青子。
Wait, she couldn't see Shizuki. The door closed with a thud.
そりゃまた珍しい。
Aoko mumbled to herself from her bed, seeming slightly happier. Blind since birth, Yuika Suze saw the world through her other senses. She was especially sensitive to enemies or those who bore ill will, and typically viewed almost everyone as a threat, presumably because that was the easiest thing to pick up on. So when she said she couldn't see Sojiro, that meant he was completely harmless. Okay. And then the harmless individual decided to pay the small sick room a visit. Sojiro looked like a stiff breeze could knock him over. It made Aoko wonder who the real patient was.
何しに来たの、あんた。
Though Aoko could barely move, she was still able to give him the cold shoulder. His expression gaunt, Sojiro grunted something or other before beginning to speak more coherently.
アリスが客間で眠ったから礼拝堂にいたんだけど、人が集まりだしたんで、こっちに逃げてきた。
あ、礼拝の時間か。クリスマスだってのによくやるわ。
It was indeed Christmas, but regular mass was on Christmas Eve. The ones gathering the chapel must have been truly devout followers. Tourists were rare in Misaki after all, so much so that almost no one visited the area. This time of year, the worshippers must have been the locals.
それで別にどうってことないでしょ。探せば顔見知りもいるんじゃない？
Aoko was as distant as ever. She clearly had not forgotten the fact he had vomited when he saw her, and a hint of spite leaked into her voice. Then again,
いや、ちょうどいい機会だから、いろいろと聞きたくなって。少し話をしていいかな。
since Aoko was always in a bad mood, Sojiro did not pick up on anything out of the ordinary. She wanted to tell him to go drink some water because he looked ready to collapse, but he didn't seem aware of his own condition. And to be fair to him, Alice did say Aoko was in bad shape given how unaccustomed the blood soldier was. It was no wonder he had fainted.
ああ、そうか。話なんてまだ無理だな。 すまない。出直してくる。
Sojiro seemed to have misunderstood Aoko being deep in thought as not having enough stamina to speak. Naturally, this did not sit well with Aoko.
待ちなさいよ。話だけなら別に構わないわ。やる気持て余してるし、暇つぶしがてらに相手してあげるわよ。ま、退屈しのぎにしてはちょっとグレード下がるけど、この際贅沢言ってられないし。
Sojiro sensed this was going to be rough, but took a seat on the chair next to the bed.
で、何が聞きたいの？
Aoko spoke energetically in an attempt to distract from her weakened appearance. Naturally, she knew she was fooling no one.
やっぱり青崎は強いな。安心した。
Sojiro said, nodding in admiration. Aoko shot him an unimpressed look in response to the unwanted praise.
あんたってほんと間が悪いわ。いいわよ、別に。私の夢の話だから、そっちが気に病むことは。
She glowered, remembering. Come to think of it, almost everyone in her dream was here in the church, turning her dour expression into an irritated one.
やめやめ、こんなつまんない話。聞きたいことがあるなら手っ取り早く済ませちゃってよ、宗十郎。
よかった。じゃあまず今の状況を聞かせてくれないか。瞳子さんの話じゃ俺も無関係じゃないそうだし。
Sojiro spoke calmly, making Aoko wonder if he really understood the gravity of the situation. He was Toko's enemy now, he was defenseless and needed protection. Neither Aoko nor Alice could help him, and the church could withdraw their sanctuary at any moment. He picked a side that he turned him from innocent bystander into a target. The answer he sought was as simple as that. He knew the facts, he was not a mage and was therefore powerless.
まあ、それでもアリスは助けられたわけだし。
Aoko did owe him for that. To say thanks, she decided to at least give him the whole story up until now.
よし、今までの経緯も含めて軽く説明してみましょうか。私も何か得るものがあるかもしれないし。
Aoko composed herself before beginning her explanation. The battle began at the end of November. A lot had happened since then, including meeting Sojiro.
事の起こりは1ヶ月前。
Okay, so let us take a break here. But honestly, I thought today would be maybe a battle between Aoko or maybe Sojiro and Alice going there, maybe facing Toko, right? But it was a little bit different today. It was the aftermath already and Aoko lost, right? Like, how strong is that Beowulf, man? How do you even defeat that? Is it gonna be like the combination of them both to defeat Beowulf? We're gonna find out. And is Sojiro actually something special, or is he actually just a normal person? We're gonna find out maybe soon. We'll see. But yes, we are gonna continue this and do more of Witch on the Holy Night in the next one. So I'll just see you then, guys. Bye bye.